Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm sure that everyone in the audience will have heard the sad news of the passing of the UK and Commonwealth's head of state, Queen Elizabeth II, yesterday. No matter your view of the royal family and the institution of the monarchy itself, nobody could be in doubt as to her commitment to her duties and to her country. I imagine that for almost all of us watching today's digital download, we have known only her as the monarch. So the fact that we will now have a king seems rather surreal. It certainly does to me. The Queen was the country's longest serving monarch, 70 years on the throne and reigning over 2.6 billion people. She was head of state for 32 countries. She invited 15 prime ministers to form governments in her name and provided a steadying influence over an extended period of change, development, many times turmoil. She will be missed. And for all of us, there will be a period of acclimatization whilst we get used to the fact that we won't see her smiling face at state events. And of course, to be singing God Save the King rather than God Save the Queen. There will also be many other obvious changes in the months ahead. People pledging allegiance to the King, reminting notes and coins, as well as reprinting stamps. There will also be countless other things that will remind us that an era has ended, such as calling barristers and advocates KCs rather than QCs and referring to His Majesty's government rather than Her Majesty's government. A sad day as we have lost an icon, and I'm sure she will be a tough act to follow. Whilst I didn't know the Queen, and although I know many people that had met her, none of them could claim to actually know her, I think that this photo, if you would do the honours, Tim, sums up the feeling of who she really was, laughing at that famous instance when Prince Philip surprised her by dressing up as a palace guard. So I suppose we should say the Queen is dead, long live the King. A sad day for us all. So, welcome to the digital download. This week we're going to be talking about, with Q4 approaching, what have we learned from Qs 1, 2 and 3? And how are you behave differently this Q4? So who would like to kick off?
Can I just say, I think for people that are looking in on the UK, that just to explain that what happens is at the moment that the Queen goes, the next person in line becomes the King or the Queen, and so we already have King Charles III, and we welcome him, and he's actually on. I think he's going from Aberdeen near Eric all the way down to London to start doing his duties, and actually he's being signed in tomorrow. So it happens very, very quickly. But as Adam said, all our notes, our passports, as our money, everything has to change. And I think that to take your question, Adam, one of the things that I've seen over the last year, or is it the last 3, is so many things can change so quickly. And we've seen COVID appear. We've seen a war with Ukraine, the oil price change, the cost of living crisis, the death of the Queen. All of these things have suddenly hit us. For me, life seemed to be so much easier back in 2019. Interest rates seemed to be steady. Everything just seemed to be going along steady, and now things seem to be changing. And Eric, you used a term. Was it the Marines or something? Used a term. Was it about
VUCA?
Sorry,
VUCA?
About moving? No, not that one. But
keeping your head on a swivel.
Keeping your head on a swivel, which is about making sure that you're looking and seeing what's going on. And I think that's something that, for me, the learning is. I'm constantly trying to keep up and keep going with things that are going on in the world, but I think we have to do that even more so. And quite often now, what we're having to do is whereas sometimes you would have looked at something and you would have laughed at them, now you actually have to look at them and actually you need to say, no, actually, that's something that maybe we need to look at.
Great point.
I think, to follow on what you just said there, Tim. I think that the one of the things that we very easily do is we default into a normal behavior. Things are just ticking along very nicely. There's no imperative for change. Everything around us seems like it's a constant, and we've got our very place in this framework. And then, this year or two has brought home the fact that those things that are outside of our control can have a very big influence on how we view the world and what actually happens in the environment in which we operate. And we have to be adaptable, don't we? That's the key thing. We have to be prepared to change and have to be brave about changing.
That is a great point. I don't know if you guys are ready to move on to, but it actually flows very well into the article or the post that I wanted to share. I don't know if I can share if we can, how does that work? I've forgotten now. I haven't done it in so long.
There's a bottom of the bottom with.
Got it. Here we go. Okay, so here, this is a post from Jeff Frick. And, one of the big concerns, right, that management has, executives have, organizations, and actually employees all over, is what's the office going to look like? What is the remote work policy going to be, or hybrid work policy, or return to the office policy going to be? And here we have Andy Jassy, who is the new CEO of Amazon, who took over after Jeff Bezos this past year, saying that Amazon is going to take a different path than the other tech giants. Many of them have put in place a return to the office policy. Apple, Google, even Microsoft has at least a policy. Andy Jassy says they have no intention of mandating that people come into the office. What they did is they delegated that responsibility to individual team leaders. And they did this actually earlier in the year. And this is his quote, which I think is really telling. He says, "We don't have a plan to require people to come back. We don't right now. But we're going to proceed adaptively as we learn." And that's the real key, right? It's taking where we are today, adapting to that situation, and as we continue learning from employees and customers and market conditions, we will adapt. We will make changes, rather than mandating to go back to something that doesn't work. And that approach is in line with what McKinsey is saying about what you need to do to attract talent. And attracting talent is going to be a major issue for every organization. Many organizations will not be able to achieve their revenue objectives because they will not be able to find the people that they need to do that. So that's my post that I wanted to share. That's one of the things that I'm thinking about for the third quarter, because we have a sourcing solution at Accelerate for organizations that's different from traditional recruiting, and we're going to be writing about and promoting that over the fourth quarter.
I think it's admirable, and organizations need to be addressing this issue and more. However, I think there is huge scope for dramatic problems when the issue to cope with all of this is pushed onto individual team leaders, because then we get inconsistency in approach, we get personal perspectives, we get why is my team not and why is their team allowed. I think pushing it down to team leaders to decide what they want to do is a huge mistake.
I disagree with that.
That's cool. That's what this show is all about.
And what does the audience think? I think it'd be great to hear what the audience think. it as well.
Whenever I've been in a situation where the senior leadership team has said we're going to leave it up to the team leaders, it's caused nothing but eventual problems, because if Lorena's a team leader and Lorena wants everyone in the office, and that's what she's always believed, everyone's got different politics, they have different beliefs and all of that. And Adam's another team leader who's like, everyone stay at home, it's all cool, it's fine. That breeds a bit of animosity and a bit of why can't we? Now, unless those team leaders actually have instructions and issues and this is how we're going to play this as a corporate body, I think leaving it up to individuals is a cop-out, and also is a breeding ground for problems.
Yeah. So here's my take on it, and why I think it's actually the right course. These companies are unbelievably huge, unbelievably complex, and most of these CEOs will tell you they're unmanageable. And so as we move from the industrial world to the digital world, a decentralized approach that focuses on teams as opposed to whole organizations is going to be the way to go. So having because the reason for that is because increasingly, as we move more away from being organizations that solve problems to ecosystems that solve problems, meaning a group of people across several organizations working together to solve a problem, you may actually be more connected to that group than you would be connected to the person who is actually paying your paycheck. So moving towards organizational management that is decentralized and focuses on teams and projects rather than thinking about things in terms of, we've got this higher, it comes down from on high and we've got this, one policy. That's going to be a better approach. Now, maybe I didn't artfully explain that, but
No, I think you did. But I would take it a step further. I personally don't believe it's about a team approach either, because if the team has 100 people in it, there's 100 different perspectives. I think we need to move even closer to the issue and move from a centralized position to a team position, through that to individuals. I think it's always been about individuals. Our team works like this is just the same as our small company works like this. If that team's 250 people, that's like a small company. And if I'm the team leader and I say, this is the way we're going to work, there are going to be people, 25, 50, 70% of the people are going to disagree with what I want. But if the whole focus is on what was spoken about many times on this show, a movement towards a fully individualized program of work that meets the aims of the team and the organization, but which is designed for you as an individual, I think that's got to be the destination.
Has it? So Apple, for example, have spent however many $1 billion on their new headquarters. A lot of thought has been given into how they have structured the internal layout of that to facilitate better collaboration between disparate teams so that new ideas can spring from that. And I know that when Tim and I worked together at Oracle, it was a huge office. Tim and I were in completely different silos within the organization, and we regularly used to see each other in the Oracle environment because we happened to be in the same office. So I was not in the office all the time. I was in the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week. Tim was in the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week. So 1 or 2 days a month, we happened to bump into each other. And I think that for many organizations, they've seen the kind of the Apple model of encouraging that collaboration in those water cooler conversations and all of that stuff. And they've seen the value in that, and they're trying to build an environment that facilitates that. And I think that how that big machine works, and I think you're right, Lenwood, these machines have a mind of their own. You've got 100,000 people that work in a business, and no one person can understand quite how the dynamics of that fit together. But what you do know is that when you put people together in a melting pot, you get stuff happens, magic happens. And I think that there are, there are multiple different personality types. Another point is that there are multiple different personality types. If you are an extrovert, maybe going to the office, being a social animal is really, really important to you. So you're going to push to go back. If you're an introvert, maybe staying at home and working in your office is how you want to work. But just because it's how you want to work, it doesn't necessarily mean it's how you could work or should work, or even how it's best for you to work. So you being forced to go back to the office to engage with people that you don't really know is probably quite good for you to do that. Not all the time, but some of the time. So I do think that there needs to be instruction from above. This is the strategy for how the organization is working. And we can see that there are benefits in this. And somebody saying, actually, well, I don't want to go into the office. I think it's a big shift between you don't have to be in the office all the time to you don't have to be in the office any of the time. So I think that there's a number of things kind of playing out there. But I think that this, we talk about a hybrid working environment where you're at home some of the time and at work some of the time. I think that must be the way forward, because I don't think that you can keep people, even if they want it, they can't be locked in their own prison indefinitely.
Yeah. So I want to share a practical. My wife works at an Amazon subsidiary, so I've seen this policy actually play out and heard kind of the stories of how people have responded to it, and the way that her department has decided to approach it is that they all go into the office on one day, required to be in the office, and they're all in the office that same day. So they do
everyone from the entire business, or everybody from the entire
everybody team? On their team.
Right.
Okay. So so they're all in there that day, and that's where they do their face-to-face, a lot of their face-to-face stuff. My wife's only required to be there one day a week. Now, this week, she went in voluntarily 2 days for different reasons that were relevant to her. And that's it. So she ended up being in the office without having to have a mandate. She ended up in the office the 1 day she's required plus 2 more days. Now, next week, she might say, I'm only going the 1 day or whatever, but it's the flexibility to be able to make those decisions based on the things you're working on and the people that you need to see. And organizations need to move to a place of trusting their employees to do what needs to be done to get the job done. And I think one of the key reasons why there is so much resistance to the mandates back into the office is because for 2 years, people did what they needed to do in a remote environment to get the job done. So it rings hollow when when executives say, well, you've got to be in the office 3 days a week to be able to get anything done.
Can I ask, does your wife still have to work 8 to 5, 9 to 5 when she's working at home? And
she was never working 8 to 5, 9 to 5. She always worked based on what she needed to get done, based on, her responsibilities on the team. So
I guess my question is I think it's all well and good saying we're going to move to a hybrid working environment, but it's exactly the same working responsibility, meeting structure, 8:30 to 4:30, whatever it is, and you're just sitting in a different room. And I find that kind of plastic, to be quite honest, that we've moved to a hybrid working environment, but nothing else has changed other than...
You know what? Part of the reason why nothing else has changed is because you got a huge chunk of people trying to go back. They're looking back like, oh, it was so good the way it used to be, and they want to go back.
Or like the initial concept that came out, there's not enough leadership direction from the top. We're not going to mandate what you do. Leave scope for this woolly kind of like the people that are looking back to drive it. Someone's got to make a decision about properly changing.
Here's the decision that Amazon is making, which is what we need, what organizations need to do for the future, because there is no certainty, there is no stability. Forget that. So it's learn and adapt. So instead of trying to go back, think about ways that we can innovate to make the new environment work. What do we need to enable our people to be able to perform in this new environment, the new circumstances? And we learn from those innovations and we continue to adapt.
But I think that we have, we've come from an era of people working in factories doing things, and their value has been based on how many hours they've put in. So you clock in, clock out. Still, there are plenty of managers that want that as well as task driven. So if you in the modern world, it should be, here's what my expectation is of you, Lenwood. When you've done this, you can do whatever you want. And if it takes you 30 minutes, then great. If it takes you 30 hours, well, that's not so great for you, but it's great for me because I still get the job done. But actually what we have is we have a culture, certainly in the UK to a certain extent, of this is what I expect you to do, and I expect you to work this many hours, whichever is the greater. So if you're working 8 hours a day, you have to deliver this value with it. If you're delivering this value, you have to work 8 hours a day as well as delivering that value. And I think we need to get away from that way of doing things. Because at the end of the day, if you're being employed to do a job, you need to do the job. That's the objective of being employed. But I do think that the problem with the hybrid environment is that what you don't encourage is the spark of innovation within the organization. It's hard to get everybody to come together to innovate in a particular environment at a particular time, as you do when you're working remotely. So Tim says, right, we're all going to jump on a call at 2 p.m. So we all jump on a call at 2 p.m. and actually nobody's feeling innovative. So we sit there going, hi, what's up, Dave? And it's actually, that's the problem. The problem is that Tim and I bumped into each other at the water cooler at 10:45 one morning by chance, and we innovated. Eric and I were grabbing a coffee mid-morning and we innovated. That's the value, and that's completely disrupted from the fact that we're not having chance encounters. Yes, I can phone Tim, or I can phone you, or I can phone Eric, or I can phone Lorena, but that's not the same as just bumping into you and going, all right, how's it all going?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the challenge, isn't it?
And I agree with that. And let me just say this. Let me make this one point. It's okay. We need to innovate, creating new ways to make those things happen. Absolutely. So we have to look for and one of the things that we're working on, where we're innovating in our organization for customers, is to create virtual experiences, journeys, where people go on a journey together over a period of time. And while they're going through that journey, they have an opportunity to have a social encounter because they're doing something together. They're also doing something that relates to their work. And in that environment, let's see if we can get some innovation to happen. So I'm not saying that's the only answer. I'm saying it's one answer, but we need to look for those kinds of ways to create innovation opportunities.
Lorena.
Yes, very short. I think we have to, the most important word is to adapt. We have to adapt. We have to take into account that there are different kinds of companies. Larger, we are always talking about very large companies that have a very particular situation, because I was thinking about some companies that have decided not to have a place to an office. And the people were not very happy with that, people that work because they want to go. I know people that were very introverted, and although that they wanted to go to the office and suffered really during the 2 years because they were introverted, they had no opportunity to be with people, and they quit from their job. It's one person actually, and and we have to rethink this 9 to 5 hours a day. How are we going to develop this hybrid new world? How are we going to require people to work with us? And to close my idea, I did think of innovation. I really don't agree very much, Adam, that having coffee or that there is a place to innovate, actually, because it happens very, very few times. I've seen lots of people spending time having coffee and bringing nothing to the company. So I think this has to be also studied and assessed very, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. What would be great, even for the small company, the large company or the small company, right, that's decided to get rid of their office space, you are going to have people, what McKinsey calls traditionalists, who want to go to an office. Why not a co-working facility?
Yeah.
Have a partnership with a co-working facility that gives your employees an opportunity. They want to go someplace, they can go to the co-working facility, they can work there. You know what I mean? This idea that it has to be our people in our space doing this, I mean, it's so outdated.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a solution to, wanting to get rid of that line item of having the 10-year lease for space that's not being used. Can we get rid of that money or get rid of that expense, but still serve the needs of our employees by getting into an agreement that's a little bit more flexible?
Well, I think that dovetails with a little bit of effort nicely into this whole kind of what we're doing differently for Q4. That's about change, and there's some big things going on. So yes, as a company, you've just invested $200 million in refurbishing your office on the basis that everybody's going to go back, and they're not going back. So you decide you're going to shed the lease, and there's then an office building which is empty, and people have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in building the office, and now the office is empty. So it needs to have a change of use, or another company needs to move in there, or
Or becomes derelict.
Or it becomes derelict, yeah.
Or become flats.
Yeah, so there's a whole
sorry, in American.
No one can afford
Hotels.
bigger things that are above our pay grade to decide, and this is a process of change. But to come on to the topic that we were going to talk about today, the process of change is like, what have we learned in Q1, 2, 3 that's prepping us for Q4? Because we talk about, we're approaching the end of the year, and we're either going to try to make a big bang in our sales this year, or we're going to prime the pump for having a big bang in 2023, either of which is okay. But my sense is that for many organizations, they're still hanging their hat on the fact that things will go back to normal now that COVID and the effects of that. Yeah, and we're all shaking our heads, but actually we see this every time we have a conversation with somebody. They say, so what are we doing that's currently working? Nothing. How did our last campaigns work? Not very well. How's our cold calling working? It isn't. How's our emailing working? It isn't. What are we going to do to generate revenue for for 2023? Well, we're going to do more of those things because that's what we know. And actually, the whole, back to Tim's original point about we're in a very dynamic environment, particularly at the moment. There's all of these kind of things coming in from left field that are fundamentally changing our view of the world. And the issue that we have is that people are risk averse and change averse. People have to be able to look pragmatically at what's going on and say, this isn't working, we're going to try something else. And actually that's a challenge, isn't it now?
Yes, and my post of the week is in that way. I don't know if you have it, Tim, but it's a post. It was published by the managing partner of Baker McKenzie Peru, and it's very interesting because what I've noticed during the last years, there were no managing partners posting or CEOs posting in this side of the world in Latin America. And the thing is that they have decided, they are publishing that they are working on their culture. So it's a consequence of the whole situation of COVID, of digitalization, of everything that is changing the way firms are conducted, the way that, for example, managing partners are behaving, maybe on digital, they are sharing, they are not keeping it only for them, so they don't feel vulnerable if they say, okay, guys, we are going to change our culture, we are working very hard on it. And I think this is a very important learning from this all situations since 2020.
I think it's a fabulous post, Lorena, for any organization and for a leader to stand up like that and to say that they're changing their culture. Bless you. It's, there's so many people, CEOs, whether it's BP or Accenture, they're able to provide guidance, not just to their own employees, but to the world outside in terms of their communications through social media. So I think it's great.
Yeah, it's an important change, and among lawyers who are very conservative and who never say what they are doing or what they are going to do, and to be on digital and to try really to change the culture of the firm. They are working very hard on it. So I think it's a great pace that we are seeing right now.
And there's a great comment there from Andrew. If companies haven't reached their target so far this year, is to reset everyone back to the office because hybrid working is not working.
Yeah, I mean that is certainly a conclusion that you could jump to, isn't it?
Someone's going to use it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people already are.
Yeah.
And I think that if we talk to a lot of companies by nature of what we do, and we're seeing a pattern has emerged. Every organization is facing the same fundamental challenges and getting visible, getting credible, and generating pipeline and opportunities for themselves. And this is not something that's happened during COVID and post-COVID. That's accelerated it and it's brought it very front of mind. But it's fundamentally not addressing the issues that people have. The behavior that organizations have is failing to put them in front of prospects and enable them to generate a constant flow of leads and conversations and opportunities. And I think that there's an awful lot of pray and spray, isn't there? We'll just do more of this stuff that hasn't worked, and hopefully it'll start to work all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm watching some of the conversations that are taking place in sales groups on Reddit, and it's quite interesting to see the change in the tone and the change in the the view is now that if you're using cold calling, you have to use a dialer. You've got to be doing like 1,000 calls to basically get through and do that. I mean, it's that fundamental. And this is, anybody can join the sales group on Reddit and see this stuff. Some of the conversations around how, to keep to do email marketing, you have to keep setting up domains because people keep reporting your email domain as a spam domain. So you have to use separate domains to basically, and then you've got to keep setting up domains.
At what point do people realize? At what point do people realize that actually continuing this behavior is augmenting the problem rather than the solution?
I think the point that they realize it is when I met a company 2 weeks ago and I was blown away by what they're doing. And this for me underpins everything what you're talking about. How's Q1, Q2, and Q3 been? What we're going to do in Q4 and into 23. So this organization, I hope no one's listening because I'm going to bust the name of their project, their internal project, live on air. Hope they're not listening. So they created a project called Latitude, right? Because it sounds pretty cool, and it's about a journey and a destination. They decided that the board were too busy being board members and busy in their individual functions. So they took a group of 6 people out of the team and gave them a bit of budget. And they didn't take them completely away from the responsibilities, but they've given them quota relief if they're in sales. They've given them responsibility relief within the company. And that group, some of them relatively senior, no one super dominant person, but a team of people that have to go back to 2018 and looked at the evolution of their business they call it from concept to cash. So if we have an idea, and then we then put that into product development, product testing, marketing, blah, 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 sell it, make cash, make profit. So that process, make a root and branch analysis as a project team. You can have resources, you can have a bit of money to do this, but analyze everything that's changed and everything that's available in the market today that's current knowledge, and see how we need to reshape ourselves to fit into a modern world with digital and modern working, like Lenwood's been talking about. How do we do that? You guys are going to lead this. You guys are going to make proposals to this board to tell us what we're missing, because we've got our heads down doing, fiduciary responsibility and dealing with banks and shareholders and all that. Go out to the world, find out doesn't have to be the best, but what are really good working principles right now that are keeping companies ahead of the game? What are the companies that are succeeding now doing, and what have we missed? 18, 19, 20, 21, and the first half of 22, and come back and make proposals. And you guys run this, and you tell us what we need to do, please, to keep ahead of the game. I thought this was phenomenal. And some of the latitude projects that have come out have redefined how they create demand for their products and services. And they're making a move towards understand. So the answer was digital, social. How do we do that? Well, currently what we're doing is not delivering. What do you mean not delivering? Give me evidence. Show me, don't tell me, show me. Right, we did this, and this for the last 5 years. It hasn't worked. What do you mean it hasn't worked? Well, we've spent all this cash and it hasn't given us a return. Show me how. Proper analysis. What's going to happen if we change this, and this? How do you know? Because they're doing it. Right, okay. And what else is to follow? Well, we think it's this, and this, so let's factor that development into the project. So the internal change agents inside the company are the people, as Tim and I were speaking earlier this morning, with their heads on a swivel. Modern professionals are busy. They're really busy. Lenwood's wife, probably snowed under with all the projects she's got to deliver. Lorena, Adam, and all the people on the chat here, super busy. John Bloomfield works for a leading ROV company, and John doesn't have a minute in his day trying to get these things rented out and dealing with complex project tenders and all of that. So take a couple of people that know enough about the market, know enough about the sector, know enough about the organization and how others are working in this space, and redefine the future. And I think this level of analysis and investigation is the only way to treat this properly. Doing a little bit here, doing a little bit there, telling people they can work hybrid and all of that, just little tiny pockets of thing. It's a proper reset and rewire of the commercial fabric of these organizations. And I loved that. Project Latitude, I loved it.
I love it too.
I love it too, Eric.
Thank you, Tim. Are you okay?
Tim?
Are you okay? Oh, he's writing a blog about it.
I'm writing the tweet.
It'll be out before the end of the show.
I told you, mate. I've done this before.
Can I get the tweet out first? Give us a chance.
Exactly.
Everyone on this call, back me up.
but Eric, what you described is really the future of the organization. This idea that the top knows what to do and the rank and file follows that's just no longer applicable. You've got to move decision making and action into the heart of the organization, which is all of the people, in the middle. And you've got to get that organization learning and adapting more quickly. I'm going to write a blog about it. You'll see it. But I saw a graph that showed, technological change is going like this and organizational change is happening like this. Why? It's because executives are not investing in their people and helping them to learn how to learn and be adaptable. And that's critically important. The other piece is social. So critically important because you've got to get your employees listening and having conversations in real time with your customers, your partners, and your competitors, and pulling that information into the organization so that you can take that data and do something with it, because the market's moving too fast. Everything is moving so fast. There's no time for, they talk about waterfall. I mean, there's no time for anything like that. There's no time for taking it up the flagpole and having a big meeting and all that. No. Nobody's got time for that.
But your point about is this about pulling decision making down into the organization? Because I'm not sure it is. Because I think then you have a rudderless ship. I think it's about idea gen and intel being pulled into the core of the organization, fed up, so that, like in the Latitude project, so that the board can go, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea, that's a bad idea, that's a good idea. Those two are.
But the board doesn't know, Adam. The board doesn't know. The way you do it today is you experiment. You let the data tell you whether it's a good idea or not.
Absolutely right. But somebody has to say yay or nay. Otherwise, you end up with everybody running their pet project and burning huge amounts of resources.
But one of the things I loved about Latitude was the person I was talking to is on this project, relatively senior, but not one of the board or executive team. The executive team called a meeting and said, there comes a time when an executive team need to realize that they might actually be a limiting factor in progress. And the funny story that this board member said was, there was a time in my life where I was incredibly fashionable. I knew everything about fashion. Now, if I want to know something about fashion, I go to my 25-year-old son, because things have moved on and there are things happening in fashion these days that I don't understand. So I go to the 25-year-old who's very fashionable and I get advice on the kind of clothes I should be wearing for my age group. And they said, we've reached that position as an executive team where we realize that there are fashions and trends and modifications that have happened in the world that have maybe passed us by because we've been shooting for the stars with shareholders and investors and banks, and we're doing all that and we're really, really busy. We're delighting, we're getting funding for products and services and new innovation and all of that. And we've looked back and suddenly flared jeans aren't in fashion anymore.
Yeah.
And no, sadly no. Sadly no. But I love that. So for me, the what we're going to learn about Q4 is I sense with that gives me an amazing sense of well-being that executive teams have realized that this isn't a tweak here to sales and marketing or a little tweak over here in digital, a little tweak. This is a proper commercial rewire of everything that we thought was good and proper about business, and reevaluating everything to try and find the best, the most current, the most effective and most efficient ways of working these days. And I loved that. Thought it was great.
So Is this last quarter of the year, is this an opportunity for organizations to throw caution to the wind and try stuff?
I don't think it's even about that. Honestly, I don't think it's about trying. I think trying is wasting more time. I think
doing.
For me, well, for me, it's about doing that Latitude thing. It's about getting the evidence. Trying is okay.
No, I mean, okay, maybe not trying, maybe trialing these new ideas, because we run a very real risk, or many organizations run a very real risk of Q4 playing out like Q1, 2, and 3 this year. Yeah, they've done something which has got them into a situation where they have no pipeline. They are hoping, and I say pipeline as if that's the only problem that they need to solve, because obviously it isn't, but it's the most debilitating problem, isn't it? Because you can't hire new people, you can't do anything if you've got no cash in the business.
Yep.
So they've executed on a series of behaviors that have gotten to a point where there is no pipeline, and now they've got 3 or 4 months when they can trial new ideas to see whether that delivers some pipeline. Because what we know for certain is that if they do more of the stuff they did in Q1, 2, and 3, they're going to end up with the same output at 3 months down the line. Somebody had in their LinkedIn headline, if you don't make the change, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly the words, if you don't make the change this year, you'll make the change next year, you'll just be a year further down the road. At the end of the day, we are being forced to make these changes, and you're either going to do it now or you're going to do it later, but you're going to do it. You can learn it the hard way or the easy way, but it's a lesson you're going to learn.
Or you'll become part of the commercial detritus that we read about 10, 20 years later about that company that used to exist. What happened to it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
No doubt about that.
What's that?
Kodak. Nokia.
Yeah.
Kodak,
Blockbuster.
Polaroid, Motorola. I mean,
Digital. Yeah, they're all there,
BlackBerry.
aren't they? Yeah.
Too big to fail?
you know, I was meeting with someone, I think it was last week, and they mentioned to me a company that launched 9 months ago, and now that company is the leader in that market.
See, there you go. There you go. It's like a version of the .com explosion, right? Where a couple of cool people get together with an idea, get really smart with digital, and unseat the big trusted, like well-known institutions and just blow them out the water.
You know what it is? They're moving so fast.
Yeah, rapidly.
They're moving so fast. They understand how to partner. They understand how to build some technology, get things going. They're just moving at a completely different pace than, you know, the CMO of another company that I talked to that was like, oh, we're going to test this for like a few quarters, and then we'll come back to you. I mean, I was like, if you think you've got 2 or 3 quarters, forget it. I mean,
I told you about my friend. I was actually talking to him before I came on this call. I don't know if he's listening because I told him I was going to do this. He owns a big IT infrastructure organization, reasonably big, down in Glasgow, and he decided that he wanted to go and formalize some of his qualifications. So he decided to go to Glasgow University and do a sort of an online MBA, but you had to do a couple of sessions in front of the class, the cohort you were going to be with. And he turned up, and Stuart's in his 40s, and he turned up and he said, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this MBA. I'm going to formalize this stuff that I already know. And he said, I walked into this room and sat down, and it was a bunch of young, cool, beautiful, you know, boys and girls, right? And they asked to, like us, like this group here, and they asked to introduce each other. And the first guy stood up and said, hi, my name's Jack. I'm 26 years old. I'm on my 5th startup. We sold our first startup for £1.2 million. And we then moved into another tech startup quickly. We got the churn out the way. I wanted to get 5 under my belt before I was 25. We're now on our 5th big startup, and we're on our way to selling that for about £5.5 million. But I wanted to do something formal because I've been so busy, so quickly doing stuff and getting funding and starting up all these businesses and all that. I realized that I don't have any formal qualifications, so I'm here to get that. And Stuart went, oh man, I'm in the wrong room. I've never felt so out of place. And he said after the 4th or 5th story like that, with these cool, young, bright adults that are comfortable with this speed of change and comfortable with try it, set it up, blah, 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 do it for a little while, sell it, move on, start the next one. It's just like, oi.
That's how they're doing it. And that's how the younger generations view work. I'm going to this organization to get this experience for a couple of years. Then I'm going to go and do something else, because they have a vision in their mind for what they want to do. And they're looking for the experiences that will give them, they're looking for the experiences in different organizations that will give them the skills that they need to be able to do that thing. They don't think, oh, I want to go and work for X company for
job for life.
Yeah.
I mean, that isn't in their head for a nanosecond. It does not occur to them.
Give me what I need because I'll be moving on soon.
Yeah.
Is this representative of most businesses out there? Because I'm not sure that it is. I think we get these little things that pop up and grow and balloon really quickly and get this kind of this coverage, and we get these bright young stars that go to these organizations because they're looking for purpose and they're looking for an exciting roller coaster ride and all of that stuff. But I wonder whether or not that is a tiny little sliver of what's going on out there. Because,
what, Adam?
IBM and Accenture and McKinsey and Saudi Aramco and all of these organizations can still crush these little insects if they choose to. It's still that these are a tiny little, at the moment, and they may not always be, but they're little annoyances to the big players, and no more than that at the moment, aren't they?
I don't know.
Adam,
I don't know. In isolation, one little startup is going to feel nothing to the large organization. 2,000 startups in that marketplace, and they're going to see 30% of their market share go to them because they're all getting a little 0.5%, a little 2.2%, and they're going to start to feel it.
Yeah, this is
Maybe.
this is McKinsey quarterly that came out. Okay, if you go to my article that I wrote yesterday, okay, I talk about this, and it's also linked in the article. This is an excellent breakdown that McKinsey did of what their view of what is happening in the labor market. And what they do is they talk about the traditionalists, which are, people who are in corporate America, or not, the traditionalists, they're like maybe, I think they said 25 to 45, something like that. These are the people who have a they're like career oriented, and they're looking for a compensation package, and they're willing to make trade-offs, to in terms of getting in terms of what an organization company does for them and the compensation they receive. McKinsey calls those folks traditionalists, and they say that group represents about 35% of the people out there. And then there's another 65% that are broken down into 4 other groups. So you're right, Adam. The people that Eric and I were just talking about, they represent a smaller section of this non-traditional group. And what McKinsey says is the value proposition for those traditionalists, that needs to be sharpened up. But those people are the people that your recruiters and your job boards, those are the people that you can access it through that mechanism. Okay, the other 65%. Oh, let me just say one more thing about those traditionalists. There are not enough of them to run the economy. You know what I mean? Like, your organization needs more than traditionalists. You need a new sourcing mechanism to find these non-traditionalists who are out doing all kinds of things, and organizations need a completely different value proposition and sourcing mechanism to be able to access those people.
Is this like finding the change makers that Eric was talking about over the Project Latitude that they were using? They were finding.
You're going to have change makers in that traditionalist group. It's not to say that there are no change makers in the traditionalist group. It's saying that the traditional value proposition between work, employer and employee basically still works for this group. Okay, if you give me a few more bucks, I'm willing to get my butt on a commuter train and go into the office. This other group, they're like, there's no way I'm going into the office. So don't come at me with that. Okay. Or, you paying for my commute isn't enough for me to change my. So it's McKinsey is saying that this group, and within that group, like I said, there are 4 other groups. And to get at each one of these groups, or personas is another way to say it, the organizations will need to craft value propositions that match the things that matter to people in those groups. And so basically, instead of having one kind of value proposition that an employer offers to attract talent, they're really going to need 5 based on the personas that McKinsey, and they're going to need a new sourcing mechanism, because you will not be able to get it. These people are not searching LinkedIn for jobs. They're not on job boards. That's not how they operate.
Can you hold up your
response?
Can you share that? Can you share the link to the report?
Yeah, I could pull it. I'll put it in. I guess I'll go to my. Yeah, I will share it for the people.
Can you hold it up for a second? Just what you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you maximum respect. Because hold that up a second. Is that I've heard about these? Is that a printout? I haven't seen one of them for. I've got vague recollections about them in my memory.
From the
Granddad
ancient
told you
My
about
granddad told me about them. My grandfather told me about them. Is that a real
This
live
is-
printout?
This is something called paper.
And you talk about traditionalists.
It's not an original though, Eric. It's a photostat.
It's a photostat. Are you gonna? Can you telex that over to us, please?
Yes, I will email it.
Lenwood, we've had a question from Melissa Drew. Are these traditionalists represent the remaining baby boomer generation? Is this an age-based thing, which I know is the question that always comes up?
It is not necessarily an age-related thing. There are traditionalists.
Yeah, I know a 27-year-old that wants to go into the office. He doesn't want to work from home.
Yeah.
Because going to the office means that he can go out in the evening and get pissed with his mates.
I'm going to be honest with you. In this report, I don't think they have an age. I don't think baby boomers are represented.
They're already out the picture.
I mean, truthfully, I think it's. I think they start with generalist, and start with Generation X.
Gen X.
Yes.
Exactly, Gen X. So, but just on that point, they say something else which is really unbelievable. What they say is, and we kind of were just talking about it, the churn in the labor market, people coming in and out of your organization is going to be so great in the coming years that it's basically going to be like new all the time. Because, like I said, we're moving to this environment where either your job is changing very rapidly. Like, how many people started a job in an organization and 2 or 3 later it's like, I'm not doing anything on this job description that they hired me for. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing something completely different. So, so that's happening more and more. And the velocity of change, it's just something that people in organizations and the leadership of organizations need to get more focused on agility.
Okay, this creates a really big problem long term. So that one of the issues, Seth Godin said this famously a good few years ago now. He said the problem with marketers is they break everything. So, you move from a fax or postal distribution of your message to an email distribution where distribution costs nothing, and therefore you can scale it infinitely at no cost. And the problem is that when you're the first one sending emails, that's okay. When you're one of 10 or 100 or 1,000 sending emails, there's a problem. You have to send more emails, which means that the emails become less effective. Now, surely the problem with this fast churn in the labor market is that if everybody in your organization is a new start because the dynamic of the space has increased to such a point, the one thing that you're not employing is skills, because they haven't got any, because they haven't learned how your organization works and the structures and the processes within your organization. And that's encouraging people to find other routes rather than employing people. So if I can pay you a salary to work for me, Lenwood, and you've been here for 5 years and you know everything about how the organization runs and you're trusted, that's one thing. If you're a new start and next week you're replaced by another new start, or next month or next quarter or whatever is replaced by another new start, you're always a trainee within my organization. So why would I hire a full-time employee and not a person that's casual labor or a 0 hours contract? And B, why would I not seek to replace you with an automated solution like McDonald's have done behind the counter of their stores for buying food? Now the problem with that is that the individuals that are seeking this magical place where they get purpose and the fast ride and all of that are in fact sinking their own ship potentially, aren't they?
Lenwood, have you seen the comment from Alistair Dickinson?
Oh, what's it say? What? Already seeing it, Lenwood. The churn and charge is so much bigger. Yeah. But in a way I like. Yeah. It's it's like adapting to it. You just got to adapt to it. I think there are some things, Adam, that that organizations should be focused on doing, if they have not already done, that are different from the way we maybe came up in organizations and how they operate today, in the sense that the repository of institutional knowledge is moving from people to systems. So we've got data. We've got data about what happened when we did X, Y, and Z, or that, and so you have less of that. You are still going to have a core group of people, your traditionalists, who are, you know, kind of going to be around, right? It's not to say that they're necessarily slower. They just like a different way of operating. So I don't think it's actually skills that you're losing. I think there's something that's lost, but I don't think it's necessarily skills. I can't remember what my thought was that as specifically. When the business cycle is changing though so quickly, I don't really know how much you lose. When you had a product that might exist and be successful for 30, 40 years, you know, how long, you know, was film like the thing, right? It was much longer, right, than some of what we see today. People talk about Facebook and some of the older social networks as being antiquated. They're 15 years old, approximately. So I think that as problems get solved more quickly, with whether they be digital solutions or product solutions, you know, there's just something new and more innovative using a different technology is going to come. So I'm not saying that it isn't a problem. I'm just saying it might be less of a problem than it would have been in prior times. I will also say that I think when you were talking about how organizations measured kind of contribution was, you know, hours, that was like an industrial approach. The hours in the office measured your contribution. I think that in the future, what will be measured is creative thinking. You know, how are you a creative thinker? What is the evidence of that in the organization? How are you impacting the organization? Are you a great collaborator, working with other people? You know, do you have the skills to do that effectively across your organization and across industries? This is why social is so important. You need to be able to learn how to meet and build relationships virtually with people in your industry and outside of your industry. And then the third thing is, can you create something new with other people? And how can you demonstrate that for me? And so when we talk about those people that Eric was saying that are described, that are, hey, we did this, we built this company and we sold it. That is the type of thing that a lot of organizations are looking for. They're looking for those people that know how to identify a problem, create a solution, monetize it, and move on.
Brilliant. And I think a great way to round up today.
Well, you will ask difficult questions.
Yeah, well, I think what's always really interesting about these sessions that we have, it's like an internal meeting that's externalized, and you know, we debate these things and we go in different directions, and we get loads of input from the people that are in the audience, and I always find these incredibly educational experiences that help shape my thinking around things. So thank you all, the team that's on the call today. Thank you all in the audience. What a fantastic
Thank you very much
from all of you guys. It's been wonderful, and hopefully we'll see you at the same time in the same place
next Friday.